We're making a jalapeno and cheddar cornbread with lime and honey glaze. But a good cornbread has a nice crust. So I got to thinking, what if I use the pizza oven? And that's exactly what I'm gonna do, so we're gonna find out together if this works or not. Okay, let's measure out our dry ingredients, and I always recommend you measuring them out in grams because cups for wet and for dry ingredients are different and it's always a little bit confusing and imprecise. So I'm going with a cup and a half or 180 grams of cornmeal, the same amount of all-purpose flour, but I'm only gonna do a cup of this or 120 grams and half a cup or 60 grams of corn flour, which is different than cornmeal. From there, 5 grams of salt and 10 grams of baking powder. Now I'm gonna give these a quick whisk and get everything combined and put them aside while I measure out the wet ingredients. Let's start with the sugar. Now, I know how you guys from the south feel about sugar and cornbread, but I'm sorry, we're gonna add some 75 grams to be precise, or that's roughly a third of a cup. To that, we're gonna add a cup and a half or 360 ml of buttermilk, 3 whole eggs. I'm gonna give that a whisk before adding 3/4 of a cup or 180 grams of melted butter. And make sure that the butter is not boiling hot, otherwise you might scramble the eggs. Alright, that's done. The only things that are left are the jalapeños and the cheddar cheese. I'm using a blend of mild and sharp cheddar, again for a total of 3/4 of a cup or 180 grams in total. Now this comes to just about 150 grams, but that's all I've got. So I found this little nubbin of parm in the fridge and I'm gonna grate that in as well. Why not? This way, I'm gonna get rid of all the leftover cheese in the fridge before it goes bad. Now, adding cheddar to the cornbread is optional, but I've never had it with, so I decided I'm gonna add it this time. I'm also gonna finely dice 2 jalapeños. Get rid of the seeds and give them a fine dice. Add those to the wet ingredients, along with the cheeses. Wash your hands because you've been touching hot peppers. Next thing you know, you touch your wiener and you're having a bad day. I'm gonna give all of this a good mix. Now, I'm gonna pour the wet ingredients into the dry ingredients. And I'm switching to the spatula. It's important that we don't overmix this now. Just like a pancake batter, if you overmix it, you're in danger of developing gluten and then getting a chewy and tough end product. The goal here is just to get all the flour wet. Make sure you scrape the whole bottom because it likes to stick and form dry pockets on the bottom. Just like this. Here's a little secret. I'm gonna add a splash of vegetable oil. This is a neat little trick whenever you're making cake because it's gonna keep it nice and moist. Alright, that's as much as I'm gonna mix this. Now the oven comes with this 12-inch or 30-centimeter pan with a detachable handle, which I think is gonna work really well. The only thing that I'm a little worried about that the ceiling of the oven is really low, so I'm hoping it doesn't burn on the top, but we'll see how it goes. Now, I'm gonna go preheat the pizza oven in the other room because it's really noisy, and then in the meantime, we can make the lime and honey glaze. I'm gonna measure out 150 grams of honey. I think this is a little bit too much, but we'll find out. I don't have to use the whole thing anyway. Now, the original recipe calls for 3 tablespoons of lime juice. I think that's a little bit too much, so I'm just gonna eyeball this. I don't want it to get too thin. So I'm just gonna squeeze a little bit in, then give it a little stir, and see how it goes. I think I can go with the whole half. And then I'm just gonna incorporate that into the honey. Yeah, you get the honey, you get the lime. I'm mainly gonna rely on the lime zest, of which I'm gonna add a whole lime's worth. On second thoughts, I'm gonna save a little bit to grate on top of the cornbread when it comes out of the oven. Yeah, that looks nice and syrupy. In fact, I think I'm gonna add a little bit more juice. Now, the original recipe also calls for some melted butter, but I think that's a little bit weird because unless you keep the glaze warm, the butter's just gonna congeal and get weird. So I'm just gonna skip it. Okay, we've talked about how important the crust is. That's why the pan has been preheating in the oven. It's ripping hot, so I'm just gonna give it a spray of oil and I'll pour the batter in. Alright, back in it goes, and let's hope it doesn't burn on the top as it's rising. Looking good. Now it took about 15-20 minutes at 200 degrees Celsius or 400 degrees Fahrenheit. The color is good, the crust looks good, but if you're in doubt, just poke it with a toothpick. And if it comes out clean, then it should be done. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back in with the toothpick and just prick the whole thing out. And this is where all that glaze is gonna soak in. But first, I'm gonna remove this onto a wire rack to cool. How do I do this? I'm gonna invert it on a plate first. Yeah, look at that. That's nice. All right, so now onto the wire rack. No, wow. You know what? I'm keeping this. It still looks like a nice cornbread, so what the hell. It's fine, it's gonna be fine. It actually looks good on the inside. It's a little bit big for this wire rack, huh? I'm just gonna transfer it back on the plate. Now, while it's still hot, I'm gonna go in. I'm gonna brush the glaze on top. I'm gonna zest a little bit more lime on top and garnish with a few jalapeno slices. Okay, I'm gonna let this cool off, then I'm gonna come back, slice it, and taste it. Okay, let's do this. This thing gave me a proper run for my money. Boom. Here we go. Wow. I ended up using the whole glaze and I honestly thought it would be too sweet, but it's not. It's surprisingly balanced. It's a little sweet and zesty, it's a little bit savory, it's tangy from the buttermilk, it's corny, it's delicious, and I'm impressed. You should go give it a try. It's well worth your trouble. Roll out.